Welcome back to Steve Rob Reviews. Today's review is going to be pole saw versus chainsaw. And I'm going to go into a little bit of a chat about my experiences with both. And I'll tell you, for the first 30 years of me using a chainsaw, I didn't actually know pole saws even existed. I didn't know how they were used. And then for the last 20 years, well, I've used a pole saw a whole lot more than I ever used my chainsaw. So let's go over here. I'm going to share some tips on maintenance and my thoughts on pole saw versus chainsaw. Okay, let's start off right here. This is my stihl pole saw, and it's a 12-inch bar, and it is just awesome. Now, the reason why I got this brush here is this is probably one of the most important things you could possibly get for maintaining a chainsaw or a pole saw. I'll get into that in a minute here. So this is a combi unit, it's called, and this is the power head here from Stihl. This is their entry-level one, and to be honest with you, this has done more than I can expect. You know, like, I mean, there's more powerful power heads, but they all interlocked into here. Very easy just to tighten the wing nut up, and away you go. You can go from having a pole saw to putting a blade on the end, or with the string trimmer head right here. So this just goes on to here, and I always put a little bit of grease on the back side here because you know what? It makes it so much easier to remove. So this is an extra length here, so I can put this piece, snap this piece into here, snap it onto the power head, and I can go 12 feet easy cutting down limbs. So when you're thinking about a chainsaw or a pole saw, what should you get? Well, if you're not cutting wood for firewood, I would say, well, the pole saw is ideal. If somebody, like, take for instance myself, I make trails going through my woodlot up in Northern Ontario. I'm trimming the branches off. I got tag alters. I use this for at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours minimum, every spring and fall. Just trimming branches and getting rid of all these tag alters. And if you ever seen a tag alter, it's like these weed sucker trees that grow in clumps. And yeah, if you don't keep up on them, well, you know, they just get out of control. But yeah, the pole saw itself, I like it better for so many other reasons. But even when I'm using my chainsaws, I got 4 chainsaws, and when I am cutting firewood, I bring out the pole saw because I can stand back and delimb the whole tree first using the pole saw rather than bent over, you know, down on the ground doing the limbing. And it's a lot safer with the pole saw. So many times your branches, you know, when you're especially when you cut down a tree, and some of the branches are pretty loaded with a lot of torque in them, and just imagine the chainsaw, you're this far away from the branches. Pole saw, I'm at least 6 feet away. So I mean, I can just stand up straight and level and just go zip, zip, zip. And I like the pole saw when I'm cutting down firewood. This goes through no problem, 6 inches of any kind of wood you can think of. And it is awesome. 12-inch chain, and it's a micro chain, so it's only a 43 gauge, but it just cuts through wood like butter. So on sharpening, I would say I get a good 6-7 hours out of this before I have to sharpen it. So let's just take a look what's inside here, and I'll show you what I do, whether it's a chainsaw or whether it's the pole saw, when it comes to maintenance and preventative maintenance, because I find most of the time the problems that people have is with the chain is not being oiled, and they're getting all kinds of trash inside their oil can. So let's take a look and let's see how to prevent that. So just like a chainsaw, you have a cover, and if you just take the cover off, and you notice how clean this is? Well, I clean this after every time I refuel. And every time I refuel, I put more oil in. Just loosen off the chain like this. And every time I I clean the machine after every tank of fuel. Well, I also take the chain off, and it's so easy to do. You take the chain off, and I flip the bar on the other side. Now you see how clean this is in here? Well, that's where the brush comes in handy. You know how many times I've seen people where they never ever clean the top of their oil cap, and they get all kinds of trash inside the oil reservoir. I mean, one of these brushes like this is so easy just to go around and clean it all up. And if you take a look here, this little hole here on this side of the bar, or if you flip it over on the other side, this little hole is the only thing that actually has a port for your oil from the reservoir to come out and go into here. And if you got all kinds of trash inside your bar blade, I just use a small little pick to take all the trash out of the blade. Only takes 5 minutes to clean this. That's it. Well, you clean these little ports here, and it allows the oiler to actually put chain on your bar. Now, I've had this. I've got so many hours on this, and you don't see it all burnt and blue, you know, from overheating, because every time I use it, I put it up against a piece of scrap cardboard, spin it up, get it going, and make sure there's oil going on the cardboard to show that the oiler's working. So let's just take a little better, closer look at the things that I do to prevent problems in the future that I think maybe a lot of people don't actually do. So let's get into that next. So part of the maintenance that I like to do is making sure that my oiler is nice and clean. And if you take a look right here, yeah, there's a little hole. I squirt a little bit of oil in there like that, and then I'll turn upside down the other way. Now you can see it on this side here. So what I like to do here, and this is something that a lot of people actually don't do, is I like to just spray some oil in here. Now this is just regular penetrating oil. And what you'll find on these units, if you leave any chainsaw, you know, or this type of a unit here with this oil jug on the side here, if you store it like this, it'll never leak. But if you put it on this side here, if you store it like this, it will leak. And what I like to do is just leave it like this and just let it drain slowly over time. And it'll come down through this passage here, right in here, and it will just start leaking and coming out. And, you know, I think that's a good thing to do because it makes sense. And then when you're finished, I just let it pour out and drip out. And, you know, it doesn't take much just to clean these tanks out every once in a while. And what I like to do all the time is use the right oil. So if you were to actually look in a manual, and you'll see they got temperature grades for oil. I mean, I don't know if you can see that. That's pretty nasty in there. Look at that. So there's different grades of oil for your bar. And I like to use myself winter grade oil all year round. Even when it's warm out, they want you to use the summer grade, which is thicker. I use the thinner grade. I go through oil a lot more, and it never plugs up. So if you were to take these 4 fasteners out, you'd see right in here is a small little screen, and it is small. It's about maybe 3/4 of an inch long, maybe 3/8 of an inch wide, and it doesn't take much to get that plugged up. And that causes a lot of problems for people because the oil doesn't come out here anymore, burns up your chain, burns up your bar, and burns up your day. So we're back at the beginning here where we were, and I put the bar and the chain on, and that's way too loose, right? You know what I've noticed over the years is the most common thing that I find people that don't do correctly is when you're tightening up your chain. I've seen a lot of people they just go like this, and they tighten up their chain. And they go like this, and they make sure that it's not too, you know, not too tight. So they stop about like that, and then they tighten this up. Well, think about it. When you're cutting a piece of wood, the wood will be here, and you're pressing up. So if we just go up like this, you can see that it makes your chain loosen up over time. So the reason why a lot of people make sure that they pull the bar up before you tighten it down. Because once you do that, right, then it can no longer go any further up. But if you just leave it static, sitting right in the middle, over time what happens? When you're pushing down on a log or a branch on here, well, it loosens up your chain. So just hold the end up, then crank down on it. And make sure it's not too tight. So when I'm heading off in the woods, I always use my pole saw. Pole saw versus chainsaw. To me, well, when I'm cutting firewood, I use both. Because I'll tell you something, I can safely delimb a tree, in my opinion, a lot safer and a lot faster than bent over and hunched over a whole bunch of branches delimbing a tree once it's on the ground using the pole saw. So pole saw versus chainsaw, well, I think you need both in my situation. And I find that this is such a versatile system, especially the combi system. No matter what brand you buy, you know, when I can switch this out for a, you know, like a grass trimmer to a blade, you know, especially cutting trails in the bush, you put a blade on, you come across some wood you have to cut down, like branches, overhanging branches. This is the deal. Never mind years ago with a homemade ladder and a chainsaw. Them two things don't work out too good. So thanks for joining me here today. Come back again. If you haven't seen this channel before, you're welcome to subscribe and see some interesting things that I do every week, just like showing you about a pole saw versus a chainsaw. Cheers.